there's almost always a way forward. But we don't know what we don't know, and that's true of all of us in life.
It's probably the most, like, being a younger farmer, coming back to the family farm as well. We don't know what we don't know. So we don't know what other people's goals are probably until it's written down on a piece of paper. Maybe you've got completely different ones, or you're happily married up and you've got your own sort of goal and you're chasing the same thing. But it could be easier if you actually knew what that other person's goal was on farm.
Well, you're in business together, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of the phrases we will use is this notion of, when we're working with families, is this notion of together and apart.
Yeah.
We actually have to have the capacity to come together, to be together, make decisions together, but we also need to be apart. And it's this tension between those two things that we're always navigating, and that's kind of socially we need to be together and apart. Financially, there needs to be some together and apart, and in all sorts of ways. So that, and on that point of, even goals and vision, my assessment is that we don't tend to think far enough ahead. So, we might think about our kids, but what about our grandkids or even great grandkids? I mean, in the ultra high wealth family space, they'll be thinking 7 generations from now. And I think there's a native Indian saying, when we make decisions, we want our children 7 generations from now to understand and honour that decision. The sense of having a really long range thinking. It's not just all about me. And even the question, what's it all for anyway? Like, what are you farming for, Jack?
Yeah.
And if you make some money, and even if you make a decent amount, what's that for? Often we just get caught in the loop of just doing what we're doing, and we don't think those bigger questions, and they're really important.
It's actually pretty simple but complex to the mind of that hasn't answered a question like that before, I think.
Yeah.
Like, you could go farming for 50 years and no one's actually asked that question to you, why you're farming. Have you asked that question before and gotten a range of different answers?
I've asked that question. In fact, just recently, I've had two different couples, actually really successful farmers in 2 different contexts. They had just never thought about the question.
Yeah.
They thought about what they wanted for their kids, but they'd never really thought about the question of beyond that and what's it all for. So they just keep moving to the next project, the next land acquisition, which is all fine. But, after midlife, it's like, you've climbed the mountain, you've been successful. What now? These are kind of those existential questions that if we're brave enough, we'll ask them, and they'll take us on a different journey. It may even be a spiritual journey of whatever kind you think, but they're the sort of questions you start to ask. Most people don't ask them.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, everyone now is opening up a little bit more, and the older fellas, in both men and women, actually more adaptable to these questions coming into it. And like the 21st century kids coming into farming are more likely to ask these questions of themselves, I think, my generation. But the older people within ag are coming up with the answers to these and sort of biting their lip sometimes for it as well. But I think that's all part of when the time's right to sort of open up for each other for that family. But what I wanted to know was, when are people actually looking for your services or to improve their people and culture? Is it just all surrounding succession, or is it just on a like week to week basis every week?
Like, how do they engage with us?
Yeah, like what period of time is
Okay.
the first sort of engagement? Is it a bit of a last minute panic shit succession? We'd actually like to do this successfully, or is it a bit more people are starting to come back a bit earlier now?
It's a good question. There's various ways people engage with us. Like I can think of one family had a bit of a blow up over harvest. So they engaged us. They realised that there was a risk to their business, and because they'd added the next generation in, blow up wasn't bad, but they realised the risk, and so we worked with them for about 6 months, once a month. We did these half-day workshops, some coaching with them. Basically, gave them some frameworks to help them shore it up. That was a 6-month program. Another farming family has lots of conflict. It's the one where they were going to have to sell. It's been 2.5 years we've been working with them, and it's been tapering off. So that was really built around succession and conflict, and that had all reached a stalemate, and they just couldn't take it any further. So our role was to get involved and help unlock that. The most recent ones I think they've gotten in really early, so they haven't actually started formal succession planning, but they're asking the questions that we help them ask, which are around vision, purpose, values. What do you want? And once they start to answer those, actually the succession part becomes a bit easier because they've got the why questions answered. So our work doesn't, and that was like 2 or 3 months I worked with those people just in a series of tools, series of coaching sessions. And one of them, we ended up with just a vision statement and values. And that was enough for them to go and launch properly into their succession planning. So we're not going to do trust structures and financial instruments and a strategy for your business, that's not really our space. Our space is helping the humans and get clear about together, be able to talk to each other and get clear about what they want and what their vision is. And it's no point going into succession, I don't think, unless you've answered some of those questions. So a whole variety of different ways that we would engage with people.
What's probably the main question, the main focus that maybe the wife comes to you? I want my husband to be talking to his mum and dad a little bit better. I want to be talking to the mum and dad a bit better, or we all want to be involved within the financials to move this progress a little bit earlier. What's the main sort of hiccup everyone's sort of having?
The main hiccup is intergenerational. It's my husband and his sons just can't talk to each other, or can't work things through together. They can work together day to day, but when they come to the bigger issues, they have no, they don't have strong enough skill set to be able to do that. And of course, all the family history, and of course, all the power dynamics of being a son versus being a father kick in. So that's the biggest question, is that wives are worried and concerned because they see their families fracturing. They don't want that.
Yeah, certainly. And like treading on water here, how do you go around getting into it all, instead of just saying a complete overhaul from the get-go? What's that first question? Or are you asking, why are you a farmer? Or if you weren't a farmer, who would you be? Are those the sort of questions you initiate with, or how does that sort of work out?
Depends on the context, Jack. If there's if there's conflict and it's all stuck, then you'll actually start working on that. Let's get an understanding of what's going on. Let's give you a few skills. Let's facilitate some conversations and get it unstuck. And then you'll probably do some work, helping them relate in effective ways to each other. So that's more, it's more peaceful just at a human level, but it also, drives business success. And then you might circle back to some of those bigger questions of vision. But in another situation, it might be going really well, but they just lost a sense of where they're heading. So you start with vision.
Yeah.
Often we will use assessment tools. We have a couple of different sort of personality assessment tools we use. One's a behavioural one, which helps people identify how they operate, sort of Myers-Briggs disc type stuff. And we have another one that goes really deep, which is identifying what's motivating me, what sort of person, what am I taking care of? What's the story, if you like, that I'm living my life out of? And, and like for my wife, her key driver is about security. For me, my key driver is about freedom. You can see that we've had some interesting challenges in our 33 years of marriage as we've navigated that sort of thing. And we built a new house recently, and 18 months ago, and we didn't have a fence around our courtyard, and so people could just see straight in. And she would ask me about this every day. But because I understood this was about security for her, she wasn't just badgering me and nagging about this fence. It actually made her feel unsafe and insecure. I can actually have empathy and compassion about that. But when I think she's just badgering me to get the fence done, then we're going to be more likely to be in conflict. So understanding because I understand what drives her, super helpful in going to the deeper issues rather than just arguing at the level of the positions we take on different issues, if you get what I mean there. So that, we will use those sort of tools as well. And they're like a shortcut just to get to know people and for them to get to know themselves and each other a bit better. Very revealing.
A fair bit goes into it, and it's a lot to do with probably social cues as well, of knowing that your wife was looking for that security at the family home, and you're probably looking for freedom to spread your wings or whatever, and what you can do within your own days, your day.
Yeah, it's, and it's unique for all of us. The tool we use is called the Enneagram. It's got 9 different types. She's not an Enneagram type. She's Carolyn, and so the tools help us get insight into ourselves and others. That's all. You're still just dealing with a person. But when you're realizing you're just coming from really different, you're just taking care of really different needs for yourselves. And often we're not even aware of that. Like, I wasn't aware of this drive for freedom in me, but now I know it. Now, known it for over a decade now. I'm like, oh my goodness, I see that showing up in my life in all sorts of different ways, and all sorts of decisions I've made, career-wise, and all sorts of things that have actually been driven by, I feel trapped, I need to be free. And now I can face that, and I don't have to be driven by that need anymore because now I know it. And so that, anyway, that's some pretty deep type of stuff.